Hello there and welcome back to another edition of Reach the Peak, the show where we take the cars of Forza Horizon 3 on the toughest challenge they can face. A tight, twisty hill climb course high up in Blizzard Mountain. As usual, we have 5 cars here for you today, and the first car should prove to do rather well up here indeed, because it is another fully fledged rally car. This one in particular is the 1985 Lancia Delta Group B rally car, 480 horsepower, 361 foot-pound torque, 2,116 pounds of weight. This is the lightest car here today, with the snow tyres equipped, which it does have from standard, by the way. It is S1 class. 889 is the exact PI on this vehicle. Of course, this one should be rather good. It has the mid-engine, which should alleviate some of the understeer and push some weight on the rear, which, as we know, weight on the rear means better acceleration. It should also do well because it has its four-wheel drive system, and well, the Lancia Delta is the most successful rally car of all time. That also helps. Yeah, the Group B version, kind of mental. This car is widely accepted as the car that sort of killed Group B. Of course, the accident involving this car would be the final nail in the coffin, and sort of before that there was loads of different other incidents involving cars that weren't Lancias, but yeah, the Lancia incident in particular did manage to be an issue. Yeah, this car was notoriously powerful and notoriously difficult to drive. Up here though, it is pretty much perfectly set up for the job. As mentioned previously, you have the mid-engine, so that does mean you have some weight over the rear, but not so much weight that the car actually bogs down. It helps it accelerate better. You've got the four-wheel drive, you've got a really good amount of power in this car, you've got light weight, which is helpful. You know, some cars do benefit from being slightly heavier just so they don't bounce around a bit, but because of the suspension setup on this car, because it's got rally suspension, it's not ridiculously soft, unlike we saw with, say, the Upgrade Hero in Pretzel last week. It is perfectly set up so it doesn't really bounce around all that much. It is absolutely fantastic. It is amazing to drive up here. This might possibly be the best car I've driven up here, just in terms of its overall raw setup. Will it be the quickest? Well, I guess we'll find out later. Of course, it's at a PI disadvantage to all the Lamborghinis and so on and so forth. But this car, it's just so perfectly set up for this course. It is unreal. Next up, we go from a Group B legend to actually one of my more favourite cars, which you really wouldn't expect from me, considering I'm not a huge fan of German cars. It's the 2013 Audi RS4 Avant, 444 horsepower, 317 foot-pound of torque, 3,957 pounds of weight. This is the heaviest car here today. When equipped with these snow tyres, it is S1 class. 832. The reason I rate the Audi RS4 so highly is because, in my opinion, it's sort of one of the best combinations ever made. It's a good looking car, in my personal opinion. Of course, it does look very much the same as most Audis do at this point, but I think back when this car was designed, Audi was sort of their pinnacle of design, I guess, for this sort of modern era we're in. I mean, my favourite looking Audi is probably the Audi S4 from the 90s, but this one looks pretty cool as well. It looks very cool, actually. It's powerful, it's got four-wheel drive, so it'll work anywhere, it's got loads of boot space. It is just a perfect all-rounder, in my opinion, and I really do rate this car a lot. And, well, driving up here does mean that I rate it even more, I guess. It is pretty darn spot on for what we're doing here. Of course, unlike the Lancia, you know, this thing weighs a lot more, it's not as quick, it's not a rally car, it's not hardcore, it's not set up for that sort of stuff. But because it's a little bit slower, it's just very easy to drive, just exceptionally so. One of the easiest cars to drive up here I think we've had, especially in this sort of modern take on Reach the Peak, I guess you could call it. The Revival, as I like to nickname this series sometimes, yeah. This car is it's just incredibly easy. If you sort of, it reminds me sort of maybe going on like a skiing holiday or something. You know, you want something that'll carry your skis and give you a nice experience up there, no matter the terrain. I mean, in real life, obviously, the RS4's too low, but in game, yeah, this thing will perfectly climb up a hill so you can ski right back down. Yeah, the RS4 is incredibly well set up, a really good car to drive, and I can't really recommend this one enough. If you just want something nice and easy to drive up here, do have a look at the RS4. We move away from the safety of all-wheel drive to start looking at some of the rear-wheel drive cars for today, starting with something that could be incredibly expensive to take up here in real life. Expensive as in how much you'd break. The 2004 Maserati MC12, 624 horsepower, 480 foot-pound torque, 3,375 pounds of weight. This is the most powerful car here today, the torquiest car here today, and the highest PI car with the snow tyres equipped. This car is S2 class and 917 is the exact PI number. The MC12, probably one of my favourite supercars from this sort of generation. I know the MC12 gets a bad rep for being a little bit ugly, which I personally disagree with. I actually prefer the way this looks to the Enzo, which is sort of a controversial opinion. You know, you couldn't really see out of it. There wasn't a whole lot you could do with it because it was essentially a race car for the road, but I like race cars for the road, you know. Some of my favourite cars, Lotus Elise GT1, the Porsche 911 GT1 Thrasted version, the CLK GTR. I love all of those cars, and this one is kind of similar to that, I guess. It's not, you know, same class of racing and all the rest of it. It's not quite as mental as those cars, but it's pretty well up there, and I do like the MC12, and I love this livery that I found for it as well, the good old Vitaphone livery. It was an old race car. It was in the older Forza games, unfortunately not in the modern Forza games, but yeah, this livery is pretty cool, although the blue colour's a little bit off, unfortunately, but it's the best one I could find. As far as this car goes to drive, well, there's no better way to say it. It is one of, if not the best, mid-engine supercar I've taken up this course. I have no idea why, because sort of looking at it, the size of it and so on and so forth, you'd think it would do pretty averagely, if not, you know, if not average, you know, slightly worse than average, but it's just got so much traction. I wouldn't say it feels like driving a four-wheel drive. You do have to be careful with your throttle control and so on and so forth, but if you are careful, this thing is just stupidly fast up here, and it's stupidly nice to drive. It's way easier than you'd expect to drive, and it's way easier than, say, the Porsche Carrera GT that we saw a couple of weeks ago. Yeah, just a really spot-on solid car, which I wasn't really expecting from the MC12 on the snow. I mean, on road it's different. The MC12's a fantastic handling car on the road. On the snow, yeah, the MC12 certainly was a surprise. Next up, we have the 1993 Porsche 928 GTS, 345 horsepower, 369 foot-pound torque, 3,594 pounds of weight. With the snow tyres equipped, this car is A-Class, 776 is the exact PI. Going from one of my favourite 2000 supercars to one of my favourite Grand Tourers, maybe possibly one of my favourite Porsches. I love the 928, especially sort of this later model. I know some people prefer the earlier models. I still have no idea why, because the earlier models were very weird looking, but this sort of, you know, the later 928s, especially this one, which I believe was the last year, if not second to last year, sort of the final GTS models, really exquisite looking cars in my opinion. I do adore these things, and yeah, they've got silly pop-up headlights. They're not the prettiest cars in the world, but yeah, they are certainly pretty cool, and if I was sort of looking for a German Grand Tourer to go across Europe in, I mean, the 928 is certainly a good consideration that you do have to have. Also, it was car of the year at some point in 1975, so yeah, that is pretty insane considering it's a big luxury Porsche. Of course, this car was meant to replace the 911 as well, but sadly it never quite did that. As far as the 928 goes to drive, well, to be honest with you, there isn't a whole lot to say about it when it goes up here. It's decent enough, you know, obviously V8 in the front, rear drive at the back. It's never going to be particularly great up a course like this, which does value, you know, four-wheel drive, good traction, you know, modest power and so on and so forth. It does have modest power, you know, it hasn't got enough power to overpower the chassis, which, if a car does, you can really feel it when you come up a course like this, but, you know, the power and everything's fine. It's a little bit on the heavier side for a car like this, which I guess you'd expect. Obviously, it's a big Grand Tourer, and you can feel that when going up this course, but thankfully, one saving grace of the 928 is it does have a pretty fantastic gearbox. You know, gear ratios are very well set up for a course like this. You know, first gear is pretty long, which is good for getting around some more tight bends. Second gear is good for running out, and third gear really will carry you the rest of the way. Yeah, the gears are pretty good, and yeah, the 928, it's decent enough. You know, it's not going to set the world on fire or anything like that with its amazing go up a hill climb course, but it certainly is not too bad. And finally today, a car which we really was not expecting to do particularly well. This is the 1973 AMC Gremlin X, 150 horsepower, 245 foot-pound torque, 2,840 pounds of weight. This is the least powerful car here today, the least torque car here today, the least torquey, and it is also the lowest MPI, B-Class 607 when equipped with the snow tyres, which is basically about as low as a car will go with snow tyres on it. In Horizon 3, sort of B-Class is where you'll find stuff like Myers Manx and stuff if you put snow tyres on them. There really isn't, I don't think we've had a C-Class, we might have had a couple of C-Class cars, I don't think we've had anything below that, and they were pretty high up C-Class cars. Maybe the Isetta, but other than that, really not much. Yeah, the Gremlin, 150 horsepower from the V8. Once you get over that, though, it's not a particularly bad car. I actually really like the Gremlin. It's a cool looking car. You know, of course, this is an AMC product, and most people, when you say AMC compact car, think of the Pacer. But the Gremlin was really AMC's sort of first true compact car, I guess, you know, two doors and so on and so forth. Yeah, and it's got a pretty cool look to it. It sort of looks like someone literally just chopped a muscle car in half, which I believe is what they actually did to make the Gremlin. I'm fairly certain they just took one of their existing cars, like one of their bigger cars, and just chopped it in half, and there you go. But that's all why it's got the sloping back weirdness going on. But it is a very cool car. I do like the Gremlin. I know there's a lot of love for the Gremlin. Unfortunately, a car which didn't actually return in Forza Motorsport 7 for whatever reason. As far as it goes to drive, well, it's an old American car. You don't expect much from these, of course, rear-wheel drive and so on. Surprisingly, not as luggy as you'd expect. That's sort of the thing that we feel most with these cars. They do lug a lot. They don't particularly like going up the hill. They'll sort of spin away what power they have and not really go up the hills particularly well. The Gremlin, whether it be lack of power or just luck-based, doesn't have that issue. It is still slow though. 3-speed gearbox, which to be fair didn't really hamper the Gremlin when it was going up here. You know, when I was speaking about the 928. Realistically, you only use the first 4 gears in the car, so to lose one of them is not really too bad. Although the third gear is pretty long, which can hamper the Gremlin a little bit. But let's be honest, it wasn't exactly going to light the world on fire to begin with. When we move on to the leaderboard, we get a hell of a surprise. The Lancia Delta Group B goes into third place with 157.885. It breaks into the Lamborghini chain of the top 3, beating out the Aventador SV that we had last week. A very, very impressive performance from the Delta. I was stunned when it went that fast, genuinely stunned. Moving down the board some more, speaking of stunned, 24th place goes to the Maserati MC12 with a 204.591, becoming by far and away the fastest rear-wheel drive supercar we've had. There's not really much up there that's quicker, that's rear-wheel drive, you know, that Lola, which you sort of saw on top, and a few other bits, but that really is it. In 39th place, we find the Audi RS4 Avant with 207.261, beats out the Gymkhana Focus, although that was the first car to go up the course, so bear that in mind. Quicker than a Bentayga, a couple of Koenigsegg's, slightly slower than the Porsche Carrera GT, but a solid performance from the RS4 nonetheless. In 120th place, we find the Porsche 928 GTS with a 217.237, does beat out the Chola, the Shelby Raptor, Renault Alpine Le Mans. It goes about where you'd expect that sort of car to go, slower than a couple of M3s and so on and so forth. Yeah, about where you'd expect. And finally today, in 227th place, the AMC Gremlin X with a 253.620, which is actually surprisingly good. It's not that far off a Talbot Sunbeam. It actually beats a Firebird by 2 seconds, although do bear in mind the Firebird is a lot heavier and doesn't have that much power. But that is still impressive from the Gremlin. Really was not expecting it to be that quick. So all around, a good load of surprises today. Anyways, thank you all very much for watching this edition of Reach the Peak. Join me next week when we're going to take 5 more cars up the hill climb course. So thanks for watching, and until next time, farewell.